planned this whole thing out. Well, they've planned out a lot of wars. And in fact, there's wars that haven't been fought, and they won't be fought until that country and the country they planned, either it's talked about or seeped or is just subliminally uh, absorbed by the other countries, that they follow. They think, oh, this is a route for me, and they say, well, this happens, this happens, this happens, and then the U.S. goes, wow, these people are just falling right into line of what we planned against having happen, and they're doing exactly what uh, they're doing, and they're going to walk right into this war that we've planned. And so that's where a lot of conspiracy theories come along. But there are people that say, well, I know this is going to happen. I could make some money selling weapons to them before this war starts, and get in and get out and make a bunch of money. And so they'll see, well, this happens, and anyway. So back to the war was planned a long time ago, and that Columbine shooting was started back in like 70s, 78 or something. I'm thinking 78. And the parents of those kids are what it was all about. In fact, it might have started a couple of years before that with that kid that that Sandy Hook incident was started. I don't think before that kid was even born. I don't know. Something about. I remember something about the father. He was popular and smart, and I think all the women wanted to date him or something like that. And then somehow the lady, the mother that was shot, I'm thinking that was her, that she somehow worked her way in to the spot where she ended up marrying him. And then was they still married? I can't remember. But that she had the kid, and the kid was, he was, even before he was born, it was like this kid, they was going to have a kid that was like this, was going to commit this, and they was trying to figure out whose problem it was. But it was all this, I don't know, it's just weird. All the stuff that's happening is like it was quelled and kept away, and if people hadn't have done the stuff that it is almost like they fall in. It's like, oh, this is a path that their thought is either, well, this has happened, this has happened. If you feel maybe it's a deja vu for them, maybe they're living in a deja vu, and this has happened and this has happened. They think, well, all this stuff is great because I'm living in this. I don't know what they're living in when they follow a path that's not pre-planned, but maybe pre-planned against. I know there was paths planned against for all these situations, to get out of all these situations. So anyway, in fact, I know that was it back in the early 60s when they was, I think it's when the Bradley and Abrams were both, in fact, the Bradley is a tall vehicle because it was made for not hills and stuff, but for curvature of the earth, being able to get up just above and being able to fire high enough and far enough for the curvature of the earth and like sandy deserts and stuff. Because if you've ever been around a Bradley, it sits really high up in the air. Not really high, but I mean it sits high up. So if you was ever in a defilade, you'd have to really dig a deep hole compared to the Abrams, which is like a flat and low, more like line of sight. I mean, they're both line of sight, but it was almost like the Bradley was made for curvature of the earth with its tow missile firing and stuff like that. But it's not. It's not really curvature of the earth. It's just anyway. So all these things have been pre-planned, just like the argument against weapons, though, is taking weapons. I don't think it's going to win out. So all these people arguing, I don't think that you'll ever be able to change the Constitution in it. And these people that are born, these attitudes of all these shootings, attitudes of all these people rioted, attitudes of all these people turning communists, they're all pre-planned personalities or pre-planned. I just seen it's too much to know that these people walk into an attitude. Just like this communism, it's like they're following something that has already been thought through, but now they're living through it and they haven't thought through it. They think, well, they might catch a gist of what is going on, but not have thought through the whole process, where almost everything is thought through all the way to the end. Just like all these wars, they've been thought through. Like all those people that were captured in the Iran-Iraq war, that was pre-planned. All that stuff, that cameraman catching, that was all pre-planned back in early 70s. That was going to happen. That's how it was going to happen. It's almost like I'm watching this stuff unfold, and it's like, this is crazy. Why are we even in this war? If this was all, it's almost like it's been physically outed, or subliminalization physically outed during that time. And I'm like, this is crazy. Why are we in this? It's almost like these people that get elected, I don't know. I think that it's almost like humans are just robots, and they get a thought that they just follow through. It's like they're like a train on tracks, and they just follow the train tracks to where they're going. They don't think anything through. And maybe that's a problem with politicians. Maybe that's a problem with CEOs. All these business, what is it, 2007? That freaking when all that stuff went bankrupt because those people had all this all that stuff. These guys were doing this. These guys were setting these all these insurance and all this stuff was set into motion back in the late 60s. Because there was this guy that he was head and tails above in the knowledge of how to embezzle through certain ways. Like, I can't remember how it was, but he was doing it, and it wasn't embezzling. It was like how he could make money from pennies and make billions off of just taking pennies out of each thing he wrote that just compounded daily, yearly, and then it just made him a billionaire off of pennies that they just use pennies, because that's how everything it's just like everything now is how the CEOs, everything is just outrageously priced. I mean, it's like, what is it, almost five times more. Some stuff is, I mean, cars used to be, I remember looking at cars back in the 60s. I think an Impala was like maybe 3,000. Brand new Impala off the showroom floor was like $3,000 back in the 68 or something like that, 69. Brand new Impala right off the showroom floor. Now, I don't know what they had on them, but it was like, I remember looking at it. It was like $3,000, and now you can't get a used, rusted out. It's like pickups now. They want more for these rusted out pickups, no warranty, no paint, rust, worn out. Probably can't get that many good parts for them, and they want more than they sold for new, sitting in a backyard, sitting in a field. You can't even go up to a house and say how much you want for that pickup, and they're gonna turn to a TV and say, well, these guys on this show, they're getting, they got it for cheap, and so I want more money for it because they're turning around and making $15,000 for them. Just turning them around right away and selling them outright to people who want to fix them up. So it's just pure greed, which is all this stuff has been planned out by this area, these people, maybe they went to school and they were studying how they could make more money, and they were saying, I don't want to sit around 20 years and 40 years in a business and make this much money. I got better things to do. I want to go this, that, and the other. It's just a bunch of young, greedy people back in the 60s saying to themselves that they didn't want to work for their life. They just wanted all the money within, say, a 5 or 10 year span. Get in, jack the price up, and then get out. And that's everything what it is. There's no business to anything, and people are stuck paying if they want something, because that's all these angles have already been studied. 32 minutes, Jimmy, Chris, why am I even talking? Well, I'm just saying, all this stuff that's happening has already been planned out, and they're not going to come door to door banging on your door, taking your weapons. These school shootings, these people, they're walking through railroad track thought that puts them right into the place where they are. And if people, and even the people living around them, they're living the life. All these people make these decisions. It's like, well, this would be a great decision. And the thing is, putting yourself in to a position doesn't necessarily make it great for everybody. And it's like, I don't know if it's selfishness, putting yourself in a position of selfishness, and to get what you want out, but you don't care what happens to anybody else. And it's just, there's so much stuff going on that it's like it's pre-planned 3 and 4 decades ago. Some before even these people were born. Some before their parents were born. It's like this planet has turned crazy. And I just sit back and like, I'm not in awe, but it's like, what do you got to do to turn these people off? You go up to somebody and you say, you agree or disagree? Because I know that I've told people tried to prevent accidents from happening to them. I was like, whoa, I got a flash or something. There's been a couple people died, and there's more than a couple people died that I've tried to warn against doing something. They just don't heed advice. A lot of people say, well, I know what I'm doing, and then they end up dead. And I found out that it doesn't matter if you tell them or don't tell them. It depends on if they can guide themselves safely out of a situation. But a lot of times, I don't know what it is that puts people. I guess it was just maybe feeling comfortable in your own skin or something that keeps you going down that path of doing the same thing that gets people killed. Because I know I've warned at least 3 or 4 people about situations where they ended up dead, and it wasn't, and I thought, wow. And I've done it before. It was like, I'd be like, well, should I tell them? And they'd end up dead. Then you tell them, and they end up dead. Doesn't matter if you tell them or you don't tell them. They still, they're going to do what they're going to do. You say, hey, this is, you don't want to do this or you don't want to do that because, you'll end up in this situation. And I've had, a person tell me once when I was a little kid, my cousin told me we was out at my great-grandmother's, her farm, my great-grandmother and grandfather's farm. And there was a bike out there. I don't know whose bike it was, but he rode it down this hill. It was kind of muddy that day. And he rode it down the hill. And I don't know, 5 years old, 6 years old. And he looked like he was laughing as he rode it down the muddy hill. And he almost, he's rode down the mud. It was like, ooh, the excitement of almost, going faster. And anyway, so I was like 5 or 6 years old, and the bike was bigger than me. And he goes, "Don't push it up that hill." He says, "You're going to cut yourself. You're going to cut yourself on that. You're going to fall and cut yourself on that steel right there." And I said, "Oh, come on, man. What are you trying to do? Tell me about you can predict." I wasn't. I don't know if I said it. I thought, "Oh, come on. I can push it up." And it was a muddy hill. And I was pushing the bike up the hill, fell over, and my wrist got cut. I don't even know if you can see it right there, but I fell and landed on some corrugated steel, cut my wrist open. And I was like, wow. And it was all, and I just thought, well, that's, it didn't hurt. It didn't really hurt. It just kind of pain of banging your arm against something. But my mom freaked out, and she started saying how they're going to have to stick needles in you and you're going to have to get stitches. And that's when I started like, oh, no, I don't want to know this. It wasn't really bothering me. It was bleeding. But then I had to go get stitches in it and stuff. But it was like I said, oh, come on, you can't tell me. What are you, a predictor or something, And, I kind of think that's what it is. And I've done that to people before. And I said, that's why I didn't used to do it because I remember doing that. But people ended up dead. So I thought, maybe I should warn them. And then they still ended up dead. So I just, doesn't matter what I do. I'm not going to, you're going to live your life. I'm going to live my life. And that's how it is. And I don't know. It's just everybody thinks they know how something's going to happen. Not necessarily how it's going to happen. There's stuff planned that goes on. I think there's some songs, some lyrics, parts of songs. Not the whole song, but parts of songs because all songs aren't written. Even though they say, oh, they wrote that song in 5 minutes in the studio. Not all songs are written like that. Some songs they might write over a year. They might write over a couple years. And not all the lyrics come for the same instance of thought, or the same reason for the song being. So, like, this part of the song might be coming from a thought of this, and this part might be coming from this. So you take it as a song that means something altogether. Even the words are maybe thrown in later because they have something in mind. That one word in the sentence of a song might not even have the same meaning as what originally is planned. So there's so much stuff that's subliminalized, and people think, well, I can get out of that. I know how to. People ought to, stay safe, live your own life. If you know how to do that. I mean, people think they live in their own life, but it's not really them. And you're on a planet floating. It's a ball of dirt made by plants floating in space. You're just a big ball of dirt floating in space that is endless. Space is endless. And as far as I'm concerned, I know you might think it sounds crazy, but you think there's life on other planets. But they don't say, okay, life on Earth didn't used to be here. But doesn't say that the sun used to be bigger. I mean, look at Venus, how much, there's nothing on that planet. It's like there's no dirt. It's just like a sheet of glass from being blasted by the heat of the sun. So if the sun was bigger, it's not being blasted, although it's hot now. If it was hot enough to melt that planet into glass, then the sun would have had to have been bigger to do that. So you can say that there used to be life on, say, Jupiter. I'd say Jupiter and Saturn are the most likely two planets, even though the scientists would say, you're talking an infinity of time. Not a billion years, but an infinity of time from one planet. Say that life of not just like this, because it'd have different beliefs, and the beliefs from Jupiter are left in space over infinity of time and are concocted through life to exist in some slight form on this planet. In other words, say I'm claiming Saturn was first, not necessarily saying that Neptune or what's that other Uranus didn't have life on them before those, and the sun is slowly shrinking, or it might even fluctuate. There might have been, the sun might have been large, and now it's just, and there was life on Uranus. People living there, it might have been colder, might have been darker, and then slowly, or Uranus might have been the name of a town on, say, Jupiter or Saturn. Say Jupiter or Saturn was the only two planets, and we're the third planet. We're the third planet from the sun, so maybe we're actually in somehow the third planet to exist. Earth is the third planet to exist with life on it in this solar system. Saying Saturn was first, and there's some towns that were maybe called Jupiter, because if you go through time, all the people through time would have been, you go 20,000 years, go 50,000 years, you're going to have whole societies move, change, and as big as those planets are, there's probably areas of those you think there's remote areas of planet Earth and how small it is. Can you imagine life on Saturn or life on Jupiter? And if they found plant roots on one of Jupiter's moons, who's not to say that there was life on those moons, even surrounding Jupiter and such. And I could run through a bunch of scenarios of what, possibility of what life was like, but anyway. So the thought that was on those is just what they call it, evolved from, like, say, Saturn, evolved thought over time. They all died. I don't know. Who knows why there's no more life on Saturn? Maybe the water water, whatever reason.